Good evening. So just over a month ago, we did the All Together IPA Brew Day, which is the beer that I've got in my hand right now. So that's my All Together IPA brew. I thought I'd use this video just to do a quick recap on how that live brew day went, and obviously do a quick tasting of the beer as well. So I've got this one to taste, but not just that. I've got a few other versions of it too. So I've got another homebrew version, and I've got two commercial versions here as well. So one from Track Brewing and one from Mondo Brewing. There's a lot of other UK breweries doing them as well, but those are the two that I've got at the moment to try out. But 4 versions should be enough for an interesting little taster video. So let's get tasting some of these beers. Right, so yeah, the All Together IPA Brew Day was about a month ago now, just over a month. It was really good. Lots of other people got involved, so thank you to everyone who jumped in on the Zoom brew day that we set up. There was actually 2 of them, so I did my version on the first one of those, and then there was another one a couple of weeks later. So quite a few people off of BrewTube got involved with that. There was also a couple of other homebrew clubs that set up their own meetings as well. Yeah, lots of people brewed the beer, and hopefully lots of people went out and bought or ordered online the commercial versions of it as well, to obviously help support the kind of charitable side of things that was going on with that as well. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, then go and check out the links to the All Together IPA website and information that I'll put below. Essentially, it was a kind of open source recipe that was put together by Other Half Brewing in America, and lots of other breweries brewed the same beer or similar, and the idea was that they would all contribute some money towards charitable causes related to the hospitality industry. Anyway, so it was nice to get involved with that from a homebrew perspective, and again, thank you to everyone who got involved with that. Off the back of that, those of you who are on BrewTube or are members of that group, then we are doing some more live brew days. One coming up this Saturday, in fact, where we're basically taking recipes from the Camera Homebrew Essentials book and doing those as the source material for live brew days. You don't have to brew the same recipe. You can do whatever you want, to be honest, but we're just using that as a bit of inspiration and an excuse for everyone to get on the Zoom meetings and do that. So hopefully that'll be something that will continue, lockdown or not, because you know, either way, it was quite good fun doing it, and hopefully there'll still be people up for it when everything opens up a little bit more. But yeah, so we've got the Hokum Stomp Porter brew coming up on June the 6th. So get on the Facebook group, BrewTube, if you want to get involved with that. There's lots of people who said they're going to do it already, so it should be good fun. Anyway, back to the all-day IPA. I'll very quickly just run through the recipe again in case you missed the original videos on that. So we had, this is the recipe I did anyway, so the original recipe may have been slightly different to this, but my version of it was 4.75 kilos of Pilsner malt. Could have been pale ale malt that you used, but I chose to put Pilsner in mine. 660 grams of oats. I also added in 220 grams of golden naked oats, so the total in the original recipe was about 900 grams ish of oats in total, but I split it between normal flaked oats and golden naked oats. 220 grams of light crystal malt. I used 20 EBC or 10 Lovibond crystal in my one. That was it for the grist, and then 26 grams of Columbus in the boil. I did the West Coast version of it, so there was a New England version and a West Coast version. I think a lot of the breweries that did it opted for the New England version, so this beer will probably be quite a bit different to the other 2 that I'm going to taste now. In fact, I know they are because I've already tried them before this, but yeah, there were 2 versions of the recipe, so that kind of explains that already. Where was I? So yeah, Columbus, I had 26 grams in at 60 minutes for the bittering, because it was a West Coast IPA. Then we had everything else at steep or whirlpool and dry hop. So it was Mosaic 45 grams, at Whirlpool. I did it for 20 minutes at 80 degrees, 31 grams of Cascade, and then in the dry hop we had 92 grams of Mosaic, 48 grams each of Cascade, Citra and Simcoe. So a big old dry hop in it, and I fermented mine out with the Laumond American West Coast Ale. So it should have come out around about 1060, fermented down to about 1013, giving me about 6.2% beer. My one was actually a little bit over the original gravity, which was surprising, considering I normally see a bit of a drop in efficiency with the higher OG beers, especially if they've got lots of oats in them. But mine came out at 1061 in the end. It did ferment down to 1013, so I ended up slightly stronger than the target at 6.4%. But considering there was a few little minor glitches during the brew day, it all went fairly well and hit all the numbers pretty much. So yeah, so like I said, the original recipe was slightly different to that. That was the one I adapted for my version or my equipment and everything, but that was the West Coast version. You could have done the NEPA version, which essentially was dropping most of the 60-minute Columbus edition. Anyway, so that's the beer. The first thing that I would say about it is, on the appearance, it's surprisingly clear. I mean, you can nearly see me through that, especially considering the amount of oats that were in it. So I certainly know that some of the commercial versions are very hazy. Again, that may be because they did the New England version. They've got fairly hazy yeast or low flocculation yeast in it. But even so, even though this is a sort of traditional West Coast yeast in there, you might have thought that with the all those oats in it, which was around about 15% total in the grist, you might have a bit of a lingering kind of haze on it, but it's relatively clear. So yeah, I guess maybe it's potentially a little bit more about the yeast on that front in terms of whether it remains cloudy or not. But aside from that, it's a lovely colour. There's still a little bit of head hanging around on there. It has been in the glass for a little while, so I've been chatting away while it's been sat there, and it's not completely gone, but there's a little bit of head on there. And if I swirl it around, I won't do that yet because I'll throw the beer everywhere, but if I do swirl it around, I'm sure it will come back. Whoops, I've spilt it all over myself anyway. So yeah, let's give it a sniff and see what we think. So on the aroma, there is a lot of the, to me at least, the Citra and the Mosaic coming through. Don't really get much in the way of kind of malt aroma or anything like that, which isn't surprising considering how big that dry hop was. But yeah, quite tropical, kind of fruity. It's got that slightly dank, kind of sweaty Mosaic aroma thing going on as well. But it smells good. It smells like a nice IPA. It's not massively pungent, to be fair. I think there's, considering the amount of dry hop in there, it could have been a bit more aromatic. And then flavour wise, there is a nice kick of bitterness to it. It definitely has a bit of that kind of West Coast kick of bitterness to it, but it's not overpowering. It's quite dry, and flavour wise from the hops, interesting, rather than the Mosaic and the Citra, I seem to be getting more of a kind of that kind of traditional sort of Cascade type flavour out of this. It's certainly more like a kind of raw sort of citrus peel type grapefruity kind of flavour. Not so much the tropical fruit, a little bit of the dankness there as well. So it does come across to me more like a traditional American IPA. I don't get a huge amount from the oats in that flavour wise. I don't know why that is, but it's not, you know, there's not a lot of sort of creaminess to the mouthfeel or thickness to it at all. Again, looking at the colour and the dryness on the finish, not 100% sure what they're kind of bringing to the party in my version of it anyway. It's not quite kicking the hops out as much as I'd expected, but it's still perfectly decent and drinkable. It definitely does tick the boxes as far as a West Coast IPA goes in terms of bitterness, kind of dry finish, and a fair amount of hop flavour. Maybe not quite as much as I was expecting, or aroma, but it's all right. So let's get the other homebrew version in there. This bottle was sent to me very kindly by Mr. Graham Hughes, so thank you very much. The bottle's slightly like squeezed in on itself somehow since it's been in the fridge, so not sure what's going on there. But bottled it off the tap at the beginning of May. It has been in the fridge for a little while, so hopefully it's not suffered because of that. And looking through the bottle already, it does look very clear, much like my one was. So let's get this into the glass and see what we've got with this one. Okay, it's not so clear once it's into the glass. I think maybe some sediment has kicked up there. It does say on the bottle that it was bottled off the keg as well, so I don't know exactly what setup that Graham has used to do that. But if it's literally straight off the tap, that may explain slightly the slight lack of carbonation on there, and also the bottle being a bit kind of sucked in from when it was in the fridge as well. The aroma's very different to the one on mine. A bit sweeter, more of a kind of ripe sort of fruit smell to it. I think there's definitely a little bit more from the hops on Graham's one than mine. Flavour wise, it's not a million miles away from my one, I don't think. I'm pretty sure that Graham did the West Coast version as well. His one's come out at 5.6%. It's maybe not quite as bitter. I think there's a little bit more of the malt sweetness from it. The loss of the carbonation has slightly kind of dulled the impact from the hops, I think, on this one a little bit, which is a shame, but I think that's just more to do with the way it's been packaged out of the keg, to be honest, than any issue with how it was made or anything like that. So yeah, slightly sweeter, maybe a touch more fruity compared to my one, but that's very nice. So cheers, Graham. Now let's get on to what the big boys have done with this recipe. I'm going to go with the Track Brewing one first of all. These guys are up in Manchester. Really good brewery. Had a couple of their other beers. I would definitely recommend their sort of session pale ale Soma. And I've actually been trying to make a sort of tribute to that beer myself recently, which hopefully I'll get a video up on that soon. Now, I have tried this one before, so I do kind of know what's coming. And when I did try this the first time, I certainly got the impression this was very much more a kind of New England IPA approach to this recipe than what I did. So appearance wise, you can kind of see where I'm coming from on that front already, because it's very much opaque. I mean, I think in terms of the sort of the color, if they were the same, clarity, the color is going to be pretty similar on all of these, but you've just got that different level of haze between them. The aroma's a bit more prominent on this than both of the homebrew versions, I think. And the first thing with this, more so than the flavour and the aroma, is just the difference in mouthfeel. It's very thick, very creamy. You definitely get more of an impression of the oats coming through on this, assuming that they did use the oats in it. I don't know exactly what recipe they did use. I'm sure a lot of the breweries did tweak the original version quite a bit. I mean, I know that both of these are probably the West Coast version, but it's interesting to me that just the drop in bitterness, does that change the how the oats work in the beer, or is there something else going on? Is it the type of oats that we've used in the homebrew version, or something else to do with how we've brewed it? But that's very much more a kind of thick sort of soupy mouthfeel, which it can't just be the grist, because assuming we followed a fairly similar grist, we've got the same percentage of oats in both of those beers to this one. So there's obviously a lot of difference there created by the yeast, possibly other things that the brewery have done, maybe in terms of the way they've altered the process, and the way it's hopped as well, I guess. So I mean, I'm sure when you take some of the bitterness out, it's going to tend it towards more of a sweet kind of fuller body and mouthfeel, but I think it's more than just that as well. So yeah, that's very nice. Definitely a kind of classic sort of NEPA flavour and aroma profile to me. Quite a lot of citrus from the different hops in there. Very easy to drink. All right, this video is dragging on already, so I'm going to get on to that last one there. The Mondo Brewing version of the All Together IPA. Let's get this one into a glass as well. So it's a little bit more orange than all of these previous ones, I think. Not sure why that is, but there's definitely a slight difference in colour. Aroma wise, I'm definitely getting a lot of mosaic. So again, it's that slightly sweaty, ripe fruit aroma that's very distinct to mosaic. I think quite a bit of gin funk to that one. I think that has got a little bit more bitterness to it, but it's still got the kind of thick New England style mouthfeel. But in terms of the hop kind of flavors, they're both really similar. There's maybe a little bit more orange to this as opposed to the sort of slightly tropical notes coming off of the Track Brewing one. And yeah, there's a little bit more of that grapefruit rind bitterness on this. It's really interesting to see the different outcomes here between the 4 different beers. I mean, they're all definitely distinctly different. As I said, I think both of these commercial ones are probably more along the sort of New England IPA side of the recipe, but the 2 homebrew West Coasts are quite different. The 2 commercial New England IPAs are pretty different as well, but they're all very nice. So yeah, I think if I had to choose one, I think it's the Mondo one for me personally. That's just got a little bit of all of the elements for me. So it's a little bit bitterness, still got the thick juicy mouthfeel, a nice range of flavour from the different hops, and still quite drinkable. Let me just compare it back to my own version. Yeah, so it's a really difficult thing to do sometimes, because when you taste these other beers and then go back to that, this now tastes completely different to what I was tasting 5 minutes ago when I first drank it. It obviously magnifies the difference in sort of mouthfeel and body on that one a lot when you're drinking something that's a bit thicker and juicier like this. I think the homebrew versions still stand up though, and like I said, bearing in mind, I think they've the other style to what these ones were. I think we've both done a decent job there. So yeah, I'm gonna have to work my way through these and call it quits there, because this is running on a lot longer than I was expecting already. And yeah, you don't want to be seeing me after I finished off all of these beers. So cheers.
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, that or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.